She left a note. "The house is being sold tomorrow." That scrap of paper was the last thing my daughter ever left in my home as something like family. At 10 a.m. the next morning, I bought the house back. Not in my own name, of course. In the name of a freshly minted LLC my friend at the bank helped me set up in one evening. The buyers, young flippers with dollar signs in their eyes, were delighted to take a tidy profit for doing absolutely nothing. By noon, my daughter was already trespassing on my property, marching up the driveway like a conquering queen who had no idea the crown had already been taken from her head. I watched her from the front bay window, papers still warm in my hand. I saw the confusion first, then the anger, when her key did not fit in the lock. She rang the bell twice like she owned the place. I opened the door. "This is private property. Get out of here," I said. She blinked, taken aback. "What? Are you drunk?" I held up the folder with the fresh purchase contract and the property records, the ink barely dry. "This house belongs to Hawthorne Oaks Holdings, LLC, I said. "And I own Hawthorne Oaks Holdings. In other words, you're standing on my porch." I watched recognition flicker across her face, like a curtain being yanked open to a scene she didn't like. You sold it yesterday," she stammered. "You didn't tell me—" "And then I bought it back," I said calmly, before the ink on the sale was even dry. Her jaw clenched, but she wasn't done. "Fine, keep the stupid house. Where's my stuff?" she snapped. "Where's my share? You promised to invest in Daniel's business. You can't just back out and—" "Where are my things, Julia?" I cut in quietly. "Where did you take them?" Her eyes slid away from mine just for a second. That was all I needed to know. "You're not getting them," she said. "It's done. You wanted to move. I moved everything. Deal with it." Then she turned, stalked down the steps, and drove away. That's the kind of relationship I have with my only daughter. A war disguised as family. A war that started with an inheritance, a house full of memories, and two ugly little figurines she always hated. Two figurines that were worth more than the house, more than the sale, more than anything she had ever dreamed of. $10 million worth of ugly little things. But Julia didn't know that. Not yet. How did it all start? With my daughter telling me that, since I lived alone, one room was enough for me. And with me, a 70-year-old man, almost believing her. My name is Arthur. I am 70, a grandfather of 3, and I've spent the last 4 decades in the same 2-story brick house at the end of a quiet cul-de-sac. I built my life here. I buried my wife here. And until recently, I thought I would die here, surrounded by my books, my tools, and the ridiculous porcelain figurines my father left me in his will. Funny things, those figurines. 2 small, pale figures of a man and a woman dressed in 18th century clothes, faces frozen in that odd, soft look old European sculptors loved so much. To anyone else, they were just dusty old knickknacks holding up the weight of time on a mantel. To collectors, they were something else entirely. I first found out their value 10 years ago. A man from New York flew out just to see them, white gloves in his pocket and an appraiser's loop hanging from his neck. He offered me $7 million on the spot. I refused. My wife Anna thought I was insane. "Arthur, we could buy 3 houses," she'd said, half laughing, half horrified. "We could travel, retire early, set up college funds for the grandkids. You're going to say no to $7 million? I had. Those figurines were the last tangible piece of my father, a stubborn man who built his fortune in the shadow of poverty and war. He told me once, over a glass of brandy, "If you ever sell them, do it because you're ready to say goodbye, not because you're desperate." Anna died 5 years ago. I still wasn't ready to say goodbye. The only person who ever called them junk was my daughter, Julia. Julia has her mother's eyes and my father's temper, which is not a combination I'd recommend for anyone. She loved this house when she was little. She used to slide down the wooden banister, hide under the dining table, and fall asleep with a book on her face in the living room armchair. This house heard her first laugh, her first teenage door slam, her first "I hate you" at 15, and her first "I'm sorry" at 17. Then she met Daniel, and everything started to tilt. Daniel is one of those men who always wears sunglasses on top of his head, indoors, as if a spotlight might appear just for him at any moment. He calls himself an entrepreneur. In practice, that means he collects half-finished ventures and other people's money. Even in his smile, I could see the calculations. The first time he came over, he looked around my house with too much interest. Not the kind of interest one has in history or taste, the kind that measures square footage and dollar signs. "Nice place, Mr. Hawthorne," he'd said, running his hand along the banister. "Must be worth a fortune now with the market the way it is." "It's home," I replied. "That's enough." Julia rolled her eyes. "Dad, he's just saying it's a good investment," she said. "Good investments don't creak when you walk on them," I told her. "They just keep you warm." They exchanged a look that said, "Old people and their nostalgia." At first I tried to like him, for Julia's sake. He was polite enough, in that thin way people are when they want something. He brought wine to dinner and talked about scaling and growth and rounds of funding. I'd built things with my hands, bridges, roads, offices. His world of pitch decks and projections might as well have been another planet. Still, I smiled and nodded. I was trying. Then the suggestion started. "Dad," Julia said one evening, stirring sugar into her tea that she'd never drink, "have you ever thought about downsizing?" We were in my kitchen. The house was quiet. The kind of quiet you only get after 2 lifetimes' worth of noise and 1 funeral. "Downsizing?" I repeated. "You know," she said, her voice taking on that careful tone people use when they're about to say something they know you won't like. "The house is big, and you're alone now. 2 stories, big yard, stairs. It's a lot to manage. Honestly, you could sell this place. Get a nice little 1-bedroom somewhere with an elevator, no lawn work, no maintenance. Just live simpler." "Live simpler," I repeated. "You mean live smaller." "Dad," she sighed, "I'm thinking of you. You had that fall last year. What if it had been worse? What if you couldn't reach your phone? What if you'd broken your hip?" I rubbed my knee out of habit. The fall had been more embarrassing than painful. A slip on the back steps, nothing more. I got up, I said. "This house is a burden," she insisted. "Sell it while the market is hot. You'll have a huge chunk of cash, and we could invest part of it." There it was. "Invest," I said slowly. "In Daniel's business," she added quickly. "His new project is solid, Dad. He has partners. They just need a boost to hit the next stage. You could take a small stake, just be part of something big, and we'd handle everything. The paperwork, the move, the details. You'd just show up and enjoy life." I looked around my kitchen. The chipped tiles I'd installed with my father. The cabinets Anna had insisted on painting herself. The window that looked out over the maple tree we'd planted the day Julia was born. It felt like she was asking me to sell a body part. "It's a house, Dad," Julia said gently, mistaking my silence for confusion. "It's just bricks and wood. The memories come with you." I wanted to tell her that memories don't travel well. They cling to stair rails and door frames, to the worn spot in the carpet where Anna used to stand while she stirred soup. I wanted to tell her that every time I woke up in my bedroom, I still half expected to hear the shower running and her humming some old Sinatra tune. Instead, I asked the question that mattered. "How much?" She smiled then, a bright, calculated smile. The realtor says you could get around 800,000, she said. Maybe more if there are multiple offers. You buy a cozy one-bedroom for, say, 300, put 300 into Daniel's business, and keep 200 for yourself. You'd be set, Dad. You wouldn't have to worry about anything ever again. I'd worked 45 years in civil engineering. I knew numbers, I knew risk. But I also knew what loneliness felt like, and how clever it was at whispering doubts into your ear at night. Maybe she's right, the whisper said. Maybe you're clinging to an empty shell. Maybe this is your chance to help your daughter's life be easier. I didn't say yes that night, but I also didn't say no. And that was enough to set everything in motion. The next weeks became a blur of realtor visits and staged photos. Julia took over the process with frightening efficiency. I'll handle the open houses, she said. You shouldn't have strangers coming in while you're here. It'll stress you out. I noticed she always said we when she meant herself and Daniel, but you when she meant me. The house was listed. The offers came. One young couple cried in the living room, talking about how they could imagine their kids on the floor with toys. Another investor group walked through with a contractor checking beams and windows like they were counting money puppets. In the end, a pair of house flippers made the best offer, $820,000, closing in 30 days cash. See? Julia said, sliding the papers toward me. A blessing. My hand hovered over the line where my name belonged. If I sign this, I said, you promise you'll help me move everything? My tools, my books, the boxes in the attic, the figurines? Everything? Yes, Dad, she said, impatience flickering in her eyes. Of course. I'll take care of it. You just focus on resting. We'll book movers, rent a storage unit, handle the logistics. It's really better if I manage it. You get overwhelmed. I signed. I moved out before the closing at Julia's insistence. Buyers want it empty, she said. It'll feel more spacious. You can stay with us for a few days. It'll be fun, like a sleepover. So I packed a single suitcase, some clothes, my medications, Anna's old photograph in its silver frame, the rest, my furniture, my tools, my workshop machines, my library, even the safe behind the bookshelf with the figurines in it, stayed behind. Julia hugged me in the driveway. Trust me, she said into my shoulder. You won't regret this. I drove away from my house in the late afternoon sun, watching it shrink in the rearview mirror, the way I once watched Julia walk into her first day of school. I didn't know I was leaving behind not just a building, but almost every physical remnant of my life. The money hit my account 2 days after closing, $820,000. I stared at the numbers on the screen, feeling nothing. It looked unreal, like Monopoly money. I'll go tell Julia, I thought. She'll be happy. We can start talking about what's next. Her apartment was across town, in one of those new buildings with glass balconies and a lobby that smelled like air freshener trying too hard. I drove over, rehearsing a speech about how we would proceed carefully with Daniel's venture, how a portion of the money would remain untouched for emergencies, how my name would be on any agreements. I stopped in front of her door, raised my hand to knock, and heard Daniel's voice from inside. When is your stupid old man finally going to transfer us the money? He said. His tone was careless, irritated, the way you talk about a vendor who's late delivering supplies. Don't worry, baby, Julia replied. We're all getting paid today. They both laughed. In that moment, time went very still. I didn't knock. I didn't speak. I stood there with my fist inches from the wood, my heart beating so hard I could feel it in my throat, and listened. They talked about numbers, about the capital injection they'd used to clear Daniel's debts, about the runway the money would give them to pivot the business into something else if the current project didn't pan out. Again. They talked about how generous they were for planning to give me something every month so I wouldn't feel abandoned. They joked about how I'd be taken care of in a tiny apartment somewhere. And once Dad's money is in, we can finally stop worrying, Julia said. No more begging clients, no more juggling bills. We'll be free. Free. On the other side of the door, leaning against the wall, I realized something simple and brutal. My daughter did not see my house, my savings, my possessions as extensions of me. She saw them as fuel. Fuel for Daniel's dreams. Fuel that, in her mind, already belonged to her. My love had turned into her entitlement. I lowered my hand. I walked away, down the hall, past the elevator that smelled like cheap cologne, out into the cool evening air. I sat in my car and stared at the steering wheel for a long time. The angry part of me wanted to storm back, kick the door open, and shout until my throat was raw. The older, quieter part of me, the one that had seen friends lose everything in ugly family fights, told me there was a better way. They thought they were tricking a stupid old man. Maybe they needed to meet the man I used to be. The one who negotiated multi-million-dollar contracts and caught lawyers hiding clauses in the fine print with a single raised eyebrow. So I drove. Not home. I didn't have one anymore. But to the real estate office where we had closed the sale. The buyers were still there when I arrived, huddled around a desk, talking to my realtor. Flippers. 2 men in their 30s, both wearing identical check shirts, smelling faintly of confidence and overused cologne. "Mr. Hawthorne," the realtor said, startled to see me. "Everything okay? The funds arrived all right?" "I want to buy the house back," I said. The three of them stared at me. One of the flippers recovered first. "Excuse me?" he asked. "I want to buy the house back," I repeated. "Immediately. Through a different entity if necessary. You paid $820. I'll give you $850. The other flipper's eyes widened. "That's a bit unorthodox," the realtor began. "Once a sale is done, reversing—" "I'm not reversing anything," I cut in. "You keep your profit. We make a new contract. You bought my house for $820,000. I will buy it from you for $850. No renovations. No delay. Just a quick turn. You walk away with $30,000 for 3 days' work." They looked at each other, then at the realtor. "I thought you needed a smaller place," she said carefully. "You told me—" "I changed my mind," I said. "The money is in my account. We can transfer it to escrow today." The flippers exchanged another look, their greed doing the math faster than their caution. "It's not illegal?" the taller one asked the realtor. She shook her head slowly. "No, but we'll need paperwork, title updates, new inspections." "I'll pay all fees," I said, "and I want the new buyer to be listed as Hawthorne Oaks Holdings, LLC. "You have that set up already?" she asked. "I will in an hour," I replied. "I still have friends at the bank." The next hours were a blur of signatures, calls, and wires. I moved like a man possessed, the anger in my chest distilled into cold efficiency. Hawthorne Oaks Holdings, LLC, was formed before the end of the business day. The flippers signed their new sale contract with an enthusiasm I found almost insulting in its eagerness. By 10 a.m. the next morning, my old house belonged to my new company. Along the way, I took a hit. Between fees, taxes, and that $30,000 sweetener, I lost nearly $50,000 on the sale and buyback dance. But when I thought about what I might have lost if I'd gone along with Julia and Daniel's plan, my home, my remaining assets, my independence, $50,000 felt like a scratched bumper on a car that had just avoided a fatal collision. There was only one problem. The house was empty. Because I had agreed, in my infinite trust, that Julia would handle my belongings. She called when she realized the transfer wasn't coming. I was standing in the empty living room when the phone vibrated in my pocket. I let it ring twice, inhaled deeply, then answered. "Dad, what's going on?" she demanded. No hello. No how are you. Just panic, poorly disguised as irritation. "The money's in your account. Daniel just checked." "Why hasn't it been wired yet?" "We agreed yesterday." "No," I said. "You and Daniel agreed. I listened." She scoffed. "Don't start playing word games, Dad." We talked through the plan. You said yes. I changed my mind, I said, echoing what I'd told the realtor. I decided not to invest in Daniel's business. Silence. Then, in a low, dangerous voice, she asked, "What did you do with the money?" "I used most of it to buy my house back." "You what?" She practically screamed it. "This is my home," I said steadily. "I realized that I'm not ready to leave it, so I bought it back." "You can't do that," she shouted. "That's insane. Do you know what you've done? Daniel already promised." "Daniel will have to unpromise," I said. "I'm sure an entrepreneur knows how to pivot." "Dad, this isn't funny," she said. "You're 70. You don't need a house this big. You can't just undo everything because you had a mood. You're being selfish." "Maybe," I said. "But it's my selfishness to live in." For a moment, all I could hear was her breathing. "Fine," she hissed. "Keep your stupid house. Where do you want your things delivered?" "Delivered?" I repeated. "The furniture, the boxes, your junk," she said. "The movers already took everything to storage. We agreed it would make the house look better empty. Which it did, by the way. You're welcome. I'll send you the address when you transfer Daniel at least part of the money. We can't just be left with nothing." I felt something inside me go very still. "You're telling me my entire life's possessions are in a storage unit, and I don't even know which one?" I asked slowly. "Yes, Dad," she said, as if talking to a child. "That's literally what I just said. I did all the work. I booked the movers. I signed the contract. I paid the deposit." "With whose money?" I asked. "Our money," she said. "Family money." "Julia," I said quietly, "send me the address. I'll reimburse the fees and you can consider your obligations finished." Her voice turned icy. "You're not getting anything until we talk about the investment," she snapped. "I am not going to be left holding the bag because you suddenly decide to play Scrooge." "Where are my things, Julia?" I asked again, my tone harder now. "Where are my tools, my books, your mother's clothes, our photographs?" "You're not getting them," she said. "Not until we figure this out. I'm not going to let you manipulate me with your stuff. You always do this. Use money and things to control me." "Julia." She hung up. I stared at the dead screen for a long time. Then, like a cold wave, a thought crashed through me. The figurines. In all the chaos and all the talk about houses and apartments and investments, I had left them in the safe behind the bookshelf, like an idiot. They had been moved. Somewhere. Into a storage unit held under a contract with my daughter's name on it. I had not told Julia their value. To her, they were just those creepy dolls. But value has a way of revealing itself. If she had done what she always did, if she had bragged to someone, posted something online, talked to one of Daniel's more intelligent friends, she could find out they were worth more than all our other assets combined. 7 million, 10 million, maybe more now, with the way the market had shifted. My heart hammered in my chest. For the first time since I was a young man, I felt genuine fear. Then it passed. Because fear is useless if you allow it to paralyze you. But if you let it sharpen you, that's different. I did not panic. I went to work. The movers were the obvious first step, and Julia in her arrogance had already told me enough. "The movers did everything, Dad. They packed your junk, took it to the storage facility, even labeled the boxes. You're lucky I found such a good company at the last minute." Such a good company, in our town, meant one of 3 big outfits. I drove to the first one. A young man with a beard and a name tag that said Greg looked up as I walked in. "Can I help you, sir?" "Yes," I said. "I need to know where you took my life." He blinked. I realized I needed to adjust my approach. I gave him Julia's full name, the date of the move, the address of the house. He typed into his computer. "Yeah," he said after a moment. "We did a move from that address last week. 2 trucks. Everything went to a secure storage facility we contract with. Which one? I asked. I'm not really supposed to. I took out my wallet and laid $100 bill on the counter. He looked at it, then at me, then around the empty office. You didn't hear it from me, he said, lowering his voice. He scribbled an address and a unit number on the back of a business card, but you're going to need the account holder to be there to get in, or a court order. Who's the account holder? I asked, even though I already knew. He hesitated. Another 100 hit the counter. Julia Marsh, he said finally. Julia kept my surname until she got married, then replaced it with Daniels. Marsh, a good name for someone who liked to drag people into muddy ground. Thank you, I said, pocketing the card. As I turned to go, he added, Hey, sir, I packed some of the boxes myself. There were some really nice old pieces in there. If you're planning to sell, you could get good money. I smiled thinly. I'm aware, I said. The storage facility sat on the edge of an industrial strip, a row of metal buildings behind a high fence and a keypad gate. The sign said Guardian Storage in bold blue letters, as if the word alone could keep thieves and time at bay. Inside the office, a woman in her 50s with sharp glasses and sharper eyes looked up. Rental or access? She asked. Information, I said. My daughter rented a unit here. I need to know which one, and I need access. Do you have your daughter with you? She asked. No. Then I can't do that, she said matter-of-factly. Privacy rules. The unit is in her name. Only she or someone listed on the account can access it. How about the guy who paid for everything inside? I asked mildly. She didn't flinch. Doesn't matter, she said. Not without her authorization. It was a stalemate. Two stubborn people with decades of practice. I leaned on the counter. If I bring you proof that the contents are legally mine, I said, will that help? Like a court order? She asked. Yes. Then yes, she said. Until then, I can't help you. I nodded. Do you know how many times I've heard my daughter, my son, my ex in this office? She added softer. Every story sounds the same, but the contracts always win. Get the paper, then come back. On my way out, I glanced through the glass wall that looked over the sea of metal doors. Somewhere out there, two ugly little figurines sat in the dark, locked away by my own child. Not stolen. Not yet. Just misplaced. The law likes precision. I could work with that. Here came the second hook of all this, the part that turned a family quarrel into something much bigger. I realized I didn't have to chase Julia. I could go around her. I spent the next 2 days with my lawyer, a patient man named Morales who had helped me with contracts and permits for years. He listened to everything, the house, the overheard conversation, the movers, the storage unit. You want to push this? He asked when I finished. We're talking about your daughter. I want my property back, I said. All of it, not for the money, for what it represents. And there are 2 small items inside that, if mishandled, could ruin her life as much as mine. I'd like to avoid that. You're still protecting her, he said. I'm protecting what's left of my wife's memory, I replied. Anna believed Julia was a good person who got lost. I'd like to at least give her the chance to find herself again. He sighed. All right, he said. Here's what we can do. You still have receipts for the items in the house? Photographs, appraisals, anything that shows ownership? I did. Years of engineering had taught me to keep records. Anna used to tease me about my file cabinets. Now they would finally justify their existence. We built a case, an affidavit detailing the contents of the house at the time of sale and move, photographs of the figurines with dates, appraisals from the New York collector, purchase records of furniture, tools, antiques. We filed an emergency petition with the court claiming that my property was being held without my consent and demanding access. It was ugly, slow, and painful, But it was paper. And as the woman at the storage office said, paper wins. In the meantime, Julia played her games. She left voicemails alternating between anger and faux concern. Dad, this isn't like you. Are you sure you're thinking clearly? Maybe Daniel should help you with your accounts. Dad, you're putting us in a really bad position. We already promised investors. They're counting on this. Dad, are you trying to punish me? Is this about that fight we had when I was 16? Because this is insane. The last one was simple. If you don't transfer the money by Friday, I'm selling your stuff. She sent it as a text. I saved it. Morales smiled when he saw it. She just made our case easier, he said, threatening to sell property that's not legally hers. Judges love tangible proof. Friday came. So did a short, sharp court hearing. Julia did not show up. Morales spoke. The judge, a tired woman with gray hair pulled into a bun, listened. She read the documents. She frowned at Julia's text. In light of the evidence, she said, this is not an ownership dispute but a matter of access. Mr. Hawthorne's belongings are clearly his. The storage facility is holding them under a contract with his daughter, but the contents remain his property. She signed an order granting me immediate access to the unit, accompanied by a sheriff if necessary. Thank you, Your Honor, I said. She looked at me over her glasses. You'd be amazed how often I see cases like this, Mr. Hawthorne, she said quietly. Parents and children tearing each other apart over things that used to bring them together. If you can avoid that, try. I'll do my best, I said. I wasn't sure it would be enough. When I arrived at the storage facility with the court order in my pocket, the woman with the sharp glasses was waiting. You weren't kidding, she said. She read the order carefully, then nodded to the young man by the security monitors. Unit C-17, she said. Open it up. Mr. Hawthorne will be taking inventory. The door rolled up with a metallic clatter. The smell hit me first. Cardboard, dust, and the faint, familiar scent of Anna's perfume clinging to fabric that had been boxed too soon. My dining room table, disassembled and stacked. My workshop tool chests, boxes labeled books, kitchen, garage in the mover's hurried handwriting. A few poorly taped boxes with Julia's carp in Julia's slanted script. Apparently, she'd thrown some of her own things into my storage on my dime. And at the back, the tall oak cabinet from my study. The safe behind it had been hidden by design. But the cabinet rocked slightly when I touched it, lighter than it should have been. The movers had not known what they were carrying. They had transported the cabinet without realizing that the wall behind it used to contain a secret. I moved the cabinet aside. The safe was there, unbroken. I knelt. My hands shook as I entered the combination. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the lock clicked. The door swung open, reluctant. Inside, wrapped in the same soft cloth my father had used 50 years ago, sat two white figurines. The man, with his delicate walking cane and ridiculous hat. The woman, with her tiny fan and the faintest trace of bored amusement in her porcelain eyes. "Hello," I whispered. "I'm sorry for the adventure." I lifted them out carefully, my fingers sure despite their age. I checked them for cracks, chips, any sign of damage. Nothing. They had survived. I put them into a padded box I had brought for this purpose and sealed it, my heart beating slower now. The sheriff who had accompanied us to ensure peaceful access watched quietly. "Are those the famous items?" he asked. I raised an eyebrow. "News travels," he said with a shrug. "I've heard stories about a couple of antiques your family's been fighting about." "We're not fighting about them," I said. "I'm just taking them home." "Good," he replied. "They're safer with you than in a storage unit rented by someone who doesn't seem to value much." I didn't move the rest of my things that day. I took photographs. I made lists. I marked boxes that contained irreplaceable items and left the rest for later. The figurines, though, they came with me. Straight to a bank with thick walls and a vault that hummed with quiet authority. The manager, a man I'd known for years, greeted me with a handshake. "Arthur," he said, "what can we do for you today?" "I need a safe deposit box," I said, "a big one, and I need to talk to you about selling something." A week later, $10 million landed in my account. The collector from New York had not forgotten. In fact, he'd raised his offer before I could even remind him of the old number. "Pieces like this don't come along often," he said over the phone. "The market has only gone up. 10 million is a bargain." "For you," I said. "For both of us," he replied. "You get liquidity, I get history." He flew out again with his white gloves and his loupe. This time Anna wasn't there to tease me about being crazy. This time, I was ready to say goodbye. I signed the papers, watched the wire confirm on my phone, and felt something I had not expected: relief. Those figurines had been a weight, a secret, a battlefield waiting to happen. Now they were gone. And so was the idea that my daughter could ever use them as a weapon. I didn't tell Julia. I moved instead, not into a one-bedroom in a city high-rise, into a small house on the edge of a beach in Hawaii. Not the sprawling luxury villas you see in magazines, just a modest bungalow with a wide porch, a patch of sand, and a view of the Pacific that looked different every hour. People asked how a retired engineer could afford to suddenly relocate there. I smiled and said I'd made a good investment. It wasn't a lie. As for the old house, Hawthorne Oaks Holdings kept it. I rented it out to a young family with 2 kids who loved the backyard maple tree, just like Julia once did. The rent went into a trust I set up in my grandchildren's names, not hers. They would get the house one day. Her children. Not her. It was my way of punishing her while still protecting them. The line between justice and vengeance is thin. I tried not to fall on the wrong side. I also rewrote my will. The inheritance Julia had always taken for granted did not vanish. It was redirected. College funds for the grandchildren. Donations to the hospital where Anna had received her final care. A foundation in Anna's name to support engineering scholarships for kids who grew up with nothing. And for Julia? She wasn't cut off entirely. I'm not made of stone. But her portion came with conditions. No lump sums, no access to principal, only a modest monthly stipend paid through a trust managed by an independent trustee who had strict instructions. If she wanted more, she'd have to earn it. With work, not with manipulation. You might be wondering what happened to Julia, whether she came to her senses, whether she apologized, whether we reconciled and hugged on some picturesque pier, father and daughter united again in the sunset. Life rarely cares for tidy endings. After I refused to transfer the house sale money and reclaim my belongings, Julia and Daniel's relationship began to crack. When the promised capital injection never came, Daniel's investors, such as they were, pulled out. His business, already shaky, began to collapse. Debt surfaced like corpses rising after a flood. Without my money as a safety net, their arguments grew louder. I know this because the walls in their building are thin, and one of my old colleagues happens to live 2 floors down. He called me once, half amused, half sad. "They're shouting about you again, Arthur," he said. "You're apparently a selfish old miser who doesn't understand vision." "Maybe I am," I said. "Or maybe I'm just tired of paying for other people's lessons." In the end, Daniel did what men like him always do when things get hard. He left. No goodbye, no farewell. Just a note and a pile of unpaid bills. Julia called me for the first time in months after that. I was on the beach, sipping a cocktail with too much ice and not enough rum, watching little crabs scuttle along the sand. My phone rang. Her name lit up the screen. For a long moment I just stared at it. Then I answered. "Dad," she said, her voice raw. "He's gone." I didn't ask who. "I'm sorry," I said. "You were right," she said, the words sounding like they'd been dragged over broken glass. "About everything. The business, the house, the storage, the money. I was awful, I know that." Silence stretched between us. The ocean hissed softly on the shore. I lost everything, she added. The investors are after me. I'm drowning in debt. I can't pay rent. I don't know what to do. That's not true, I said gently. You've always known what to do. You just never liked the answer. She sniffed. I don't deserve your help, she whispered. No, I said. You don't. She inhaled sharply as if I'd slapped her. But, I continued, I didn't raise you to fail. And your mother didn't love you so you could end up on the street. Are you going to send me money? She asked, small as a child for the first time in years. No, I said. I'm going to send you a ticket. A ticket? She repeated. To Hawaii, I said. For a week. You can stay in the spare room. We'll talk. Not about money. About the things we should have talked about years ago. And after that? She asked. After that, I said, you go back and start over. You get a job. Any job. You learn to live within your means. If you do that, the trust I set up will help make your life easier. If you don't, it will simply keep you from starving. That's all. You set up a trust? She asked, stunned. For me? For you, the grandchildren, and your mother's memory, I said. In that order. She cried then. Not the angry, frustrated tears I'd grown used to hearing when I refused one of her demands. These were quieter, broken in a way that reminded me of the girl who had sobbed when her hamster died at 10. I don't know if I can change, she whispered. I don't know either, I replied. But I know you'll have to try. I've done my part. The rest is on you. Maybe one day I'll forgive her. Maybe one day she'll forgive herself. Maybe we'll sit on this beach together watching the sun melt into the ocean and talk about Anna like normal people who remember their dead with warmth instead of anger. I don't know. What I do know is this. My daughter tried to sell my house, my life, and my future for her boyfriend's failing dream. She hid my belongings in a storage unit and threatened to ransom them for cash. She nearly gambled away 2 small figurines that were worth $10 million. And I, the stupid old man, bought my house back before she even realized it was gone, rescued my past from a metal box, turned porcelain into freedom, and built a new life an ocean away. Now I sit on the beach, my feet in warm sand, a cocktail in my hand, the waves whispering secrets I no longer need to keep. For the first time in many years, I live in a house that truly belongs to me. Not because my name is on the deed, but because, finally, no one I love sees it as a prize to be claimed, just a home, mine, and that in the end is worth more than all the figurines in the world.
My grandpa's words really happened. I believe him. If you want more true tales stories like this, hit subscribe.